Hey everyone, and welcome to the Climate Career Kit podcast. This is your host, Eugene Kirpichov. If you are a high schooler looking for direction in climate change related careers, tune in to every episode for advice from diverse leaders in climate jobs today and learn about new and exciting opportunities that you can pursue. Today's guest is Eugene Kirpichov, who is the founder of a nonprofit called Work on Climate. Welcome, Eugene. We are so excited to have you for the second episode of the Climate Career Kit. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Ashini.
Can you start off by telling us a little bit about what you do and what Work on Climate is?
Sure. So I'll tell a little bit about my background pre-starting this nonprofit. Almost all of my career, I was a software engineer, about 15 years in that line of work. And about half of that was at Google. I was working on large-scale data processing systems, machine learning systems, and all that kind of jazz. And then around summer of 2020, it had been a few years that my level of climate concern has been building up and got to the level where I couldn't justify to myself why I'm still working on something that isn't climate. And so I left together with my coworker from Google AI. And we didn't really have a plan except for the plan to fully dedicate ourselves to finding what we're going to do in climate. And we didn't know even how our skills could be useful in it and where exactly, but we were going to figure it out. And then I'm going to segue into the story of how Work on Climate got started. So the first thing that happened was I made a goodbye post on LinkedIn, and I thought it would be just a couple of friends saying, good luck with you in your adventures, Eugene, but instead it blew the hell up. And so all of a sudden we were talking to hundreds of people who were saying, I want to work in climate, but I don't know where to start. Exactly the same boat that we were in. And so initially we started Work on Climate just as a little bit of an experimental community, trying to help these people find climate work. So it was a community for professionals who are looking for climate work. And we brought on a bunch of these people. We brought on a bunch of the climate experts we met and just hoped that they would help each other. And that took off. Turns out there's really a lot of people who are eager to know how their skills can be used in climate, eager to find climate work. And there is a lot of climate work for them to find. So the community took off and pretty quickly became the world's largest of its kind. And then around the previous new year, 2021, I realized that there is something much, much bigger to do in the scope of our work. And that's when I stopped treating this as a side project and went all in. And now this is I think I can say with confidence that this is the most important thing I'll ever do is running this nonprofit.
I really love the idea, especially for us in high school who can use this as a resource when trying to figure out how we can contribute to the fight against climate change. Can you tell us a little bit about what motivated you to start this community?
Yeah, so I'll start with what motivated me to work on climate in general, setting aside why specifically starting this community. So normally I don't like using doom and gloom and fear as a motivator. It's a very bad motivator. I prefer much better to motivate people with a sense of opportunity and excitement at the world we can build here. But at the moment I didn't have that. I didn't know what we can build. I was just freaking out. I was just learning more and more about how big are the dangers. And it worked on me. The fear worked on me. Luckily, very quickly after that, I understood the opportunity aspect of it, and it was a much better place from which to approach my search. But I don't know if it really makes sense to repeat all the doom and gloom parts of this. I'm sure by now everybody is familiar with them, but I was just too worried. And then as to why specifically working on this, well, I like the concept of leverage points, which is when you're trying to tackle a problem, there's often a few very different points from which you can tackle it. And for example, if you're talking about tackling climate change, sure, you can tackle it by composting your waste, or you can tackle it by starting a company. And I think it's pretty obvious which of these is more impactful. And I decided to tackle it from the point of bringing other people into working on climate. And this is, in my opinion, this is even more impactful, because if I brought even one person into climate who is, has a similar skill set to myself, then I've already done more than I could have possibly done by myself.
Yeah, this is a really great resource you have built to help others learn more and share about climate change careers. And as my audience is mostly high school students, what ways can high schoolers get involved in the work on climate community?
Yeah, I would like to start by talking, just like giving a bit of a better sense as to how you can expect to be involved in solving climate change as you get into the workforce later on in your life, and then segue into what that means for your involvement in work on climate itself. So I think many people hold the idea that working on climate means being a climate scientist, or it means being like a politician, or it means being an activist and walking around with a strongly worded banner. And that's a tiny fraction of the things that you can do. Or they think it means composting their waste. Because really solving climate change, what it means, it simply means rebuilding every part of our economy. It means transitioning from gas-powered vehicles to electric vehicles, from animal meat to plant-based meat, from dirty energy to clean energy, and so on. So pretty much every single branch of the economy needs to be rebuilt. And if you think about it that way, then on one hand, of course, it's a problem with an enormous scope. On the other hand, it becomes clear that there are far more people who are going to participate in it than just climate scientists and activists. For example, the people who are going to participate in a transition from animal meat to plant-based meat, it's not activists, it's food industry executives, and it's business development professionals, and it's designers and marketing people who are going to make this transition succeed, and chemists and biologists and food scientists, and so on and so on. So not who people traditionally associate with climate jobs, it's pretty much everyone. So everybody working in any industry that's undergoing the transition in any role, all of those people are going to participate in this. So whichever your skills are, you are going to participate in this sooner or later. There are just certain choices you can make today to work at companies or in roles that are already focused on this transition. And if you are the kind of person who likes to advocate for change around you too, you can advocate for this transition happening faster, or you can advocate, for example, within your school for teaching you the knowledge about how you can participate in this transition. As to what you can do inside work on climate itself, well, a good start can be just to talk to a bunch of people and understand the landscape of these solutions better. Generally, when people ask, how can I learn about climate solutions? It's such a complex, overwhelming space. My one piece of advice is do it by talking to people rather than by reading, because the speed of learning is just like you're going to learn in one conversation something that would have taken you a week to read.
Yeah, thank you so much for creating like a resource for us to go and find people to talk to. Like I personally have used your community many times to find people who work in climate for me to talk to on this podcast. And to all the listeners, if you are like me and looking for someone to learn from and connect with, check out Work on Climate on LinkedIn. Now, from your experience working through this community, what are the most essential skills necessary to build a career in climate?
Yeah, it's like I mentioned, because solving climate change is pretty much about rebuilding every existing industry. For the most part, the skills you need are simply skills you need to be in that industry, whichever industry you choose in. If you're going to work in deploying electric vehicles, you need the skills that you need to deploy electric vehicles. Like maybe you want to be a mechanical engineer, maybe you want to be a business development professional, maybe you want to be an electrical engineer. So you definitely, absolutely do not need, for example, a PhD in climate science or climate policy to participate in a transition to electric vehicles. But there are some roles where you do need these skills. For example, if you want to play a role in helping a company that today manufactures gas-powered vehicles, helping them transition to electric vehicles, then you probably need a type of chief sustainability officer role, where you do need to understand what it takes for a company to pull off this kind of transition. You probably need to understand how to do emission accounting. You probably need to understand the landscape of policy around electric vehicles, so that you can understand, for example, in which states do you want to start? Where is the business environment most friendly? Or what kind of policy should you lobby for as somebody in that kind of leadership position? So this is just one example, electric vehicles, right? But there are like there are as many climate solutions as there are branches of the economy. There are hundreds of them, if not thousands.
So now that you have gone through your climate journey, what advice would you give to your high school self or other high schoolers about pursuing an environmental career?
Yeah, the advice I would give is do not settle for anything else. So start looking for this type of career now. It might take a while, but do not know that it's out there. So do not give up. Know that there are millions of people looking for the same thing, and the field is growing at an incredibly rapid pace. So if you're a high schooler today, by the time you're ready to enter the workforce, there will be a job for you. It's growing at just an absolutely insane pace. So by now, for example, 1/3 of all venture investment is going into climate solutions. It's mind-boggling. It's more than money that's going into AI. It's more than money that's going into crypto. All those things that people think money is going to, climate is getting more of the money than than that. And the whole point of that money is to pay people salaries. So the whole point of the money is that people come and do this work and get paid for it.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Eugene. And to all the listeners, make sure to tune in to the next episode of the Climate Career Kit with new episodes every other Sunday.